Okay. Yes.
Hello, and lovely
Hi.
to. I think I've met you once before. Haven't I met you on the stairs at Amped once?
I think so. Yeah, yeah.
I think I'm usually very stressed when I'm doing projects at that space, so I'm not usually not very friendly. But I think I saw you there once.
I think you were very friendly to me, actually.
Oh, oh, good. Sure, I'll just in case. Well,
No, I think we had like just a brief conversation, but it was a friendly one.
okay, that's a relief.
Yeah.
Um, well, lovely to actually be chatting to you. Really appreciate you being on this. This is quite weird for me. It's the first time I've ever done a day one of these.
Yeah, and at some point we were trying to fake it, right? We were trying to say, hey,
Ah,
let's make it dark. Let's.
no. But usually, so what normally happens on this show is I drink whiskey regardless of the other person. But I did think it's still early in the day. It's not the best idea. So I do. This is my other poison, right? I flakies.
I
I
used to
like
love those when I was younger.
when I go to the engine round the corner. I'm
Yeah.
even if I'm going to buy milk, I don't tell anyone. A little flaky, eats it on the way home. No one knows.
You know what? You know what? My current well, poison.
Yeah,
In that likeness, I can't get over Magnum. Like
yeah.
it just helped me so much. Like,
Which one?
well, the classic is really good for me, but like on extra stressful days, I'll have the Death
Almond.
by Chocolate.
Oh, wow.
I'll
That
have the
one's
Death.
hectic.
That one is hectic. That one is
Be
hectic,
honest
but
with
I
me, all
love.
right?
Mhm.
How many do you have? One a day, one a week?
So tell you what, John, I just
Yeah.
got off holiday, and while I was on holiday, I was basically, just indulging. So I came back and I was like, I have to, ease a little bit on the sugar. So I've only had it once because like
Yes.
when my husband picked me up from the airport, he was carrying a Magnum. I was like, no. I
So are
just,
you detoxing?
got off
Are you in
those. So
Magnum detox?
yeah, I'm on Magnum Detox at the moment.
Cool. Um, and then what are your other, just to start here and get it out the way, what are your other vices? Do you smoke? Do you what are the things that are bad for you that you
One of the things that are bad for me, I don't drink, which I don't think
Hmm,
drinking is bad. I just don't come from a family where we consume alcohol, so never really consumed alcohol. Um, if I'm in the studio, sometimes I'll have, like maybe I'll smoke weed, but like if I'm not really a weed smoker, but
hmm.
sometimes in the studio it just makes me not think about anything else outside of the music.
And you have a home studio, don't you?
Yeah, I have a home studio.
And is that where you've been doing most of how long have you had a studio at home that's actually like functional for what you're doing, or do you just use it for demoing?
Yeah. So it's been for demos. I've had one functionally since 2018.
Oh, cool.
And it's really helped me. I mean, like even before COVID, I was well versed at recording myself, recording my own guitars. It's really helped me not depend. In my career, I generally try not to depend on people. And of course, you can't be an islander, but I try to learn about each part of, the business or the craft so that I have at least a workable knowledge around it.
Are you quite have you become technical in the studio? Are you selective about your mic choice and your mic placements, or you just want to get the song into the system and an engineer will worry about that another time?
Yeah, I let the engineers worry about that. I've tried to go on Skillshare and look for courses and the like. But I mainly use my studio for songwriting purposes. And
Mm.
when you catch the vibe, you don't want to be thinking about the mic. You just want to
That's
get your
honest.
idea down.
Well,
Yeah.
this studio that I'm in, me and my wife, who's also we were songwriters for our career for many years, and what I love about it is we built this studio. It's actually really crap when someone else uses it, because
Yeah.
everything is completely set up perfectly to have an
For you
idea
guys.
and to have it, in the system and sounding okay within minutes. Like, I never have to worry about pushing anything or changing anything. You just walk in,
Yep.
press record, go.
Yep. Yep.
So no, I
So
appreciate that.
efficient.
And I get annoyed with, because I do have a lot of people who come and say, "Oh, I just need to do something in your studio." But then they're in your studio, then everything's changed and you got to go and figure out how to put it all back.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. No, a home
Yeah.
studio definitely has to be plug and play.
Hmm. Berita, you are such a magnificent musician. Just what you're doing, how you're doing it, your voice is crazy. I'm sure you know that. Take me
Thank
back
you.
to well, let's just start. I, we have to start at a mutual love for Oliver Mtukudzi, right?
Oh, yeah.
Who I'm obsessed with him, and I was I mean, I was trying to get him on this podcast. I was trying to get him in at Amp Studios. We were trying to get all the pieces together. It didn't work out in time. Tell me
Mm.
about you growing up listening to Oliver.
Yes, so I'm originally from Zimbabwe, and
Mm.
growing up, Oliver Mtukudzi's music is like really the national anthem of Zimbabwe.
Yeah.
There's this song when I was, I think, 10 years old that came out by Baba Oliver that was called Vuma, which means
Oh
admit.
man,
I don't know if you know the song Vuma
I know
Wasakara,
the song. Yes, yes.
which basically means it was like a sub code to then President Robert Mugabe, who had been in
Mm.
power for many, many years. And, he had his, people that loved him and people that did not agree with his tactics. So a lot of Zimbabweans obviously felt frustrated by the fact that he's been in power for so long, although they continuously voted him in. So there's this song,
Supposedly.
yeah, supposedly, without getting much into the politics.
Yeah.
So I remember when that song came out, everyone used to play that song until it got banned, obviously, because of the message. And
What are the lyrics? Tell me about what the lyrics are about.
so let me actually see if I can find it online. Let me. Vuma, Oliver, Pikutsi. Uh, so it's in Shona, and my Shona is not that good.
Probably
Vuma,
better than
Vuma,
mine.
Vuma iwe. So agree, admit. Vuma chete, like just admit, don't question. Vuma wasakara. Admit to the fact that you're old. Why Vuma wa unyana, like you're out of flavor, you're out of taste.
Right. Brilliant.
Vuma wasakara, like you're too old to be in power, basically. Yeah,
Wow, that's power.
yeah.
Amazing. I'll tell you just one side thing. I got when I was in a band, we got banned in Zimbabwe. We did a song about Zim, and it didn't go down well with Mugabe.
Yeah.
Um,
Tell you what, I've been actually for like 10 years now, I've been putting
mm,
off doing my Zimbabwe album because I've
right.
always wanted, like my music is influenced by my surroundings where I've traveled to, and the Eastern Cape is a big part of it because when I first arrived in the Eastern Cape, I was, 20 years old. I came to study. That's where I met my friends. That's where I started jamming, going to jam sessions, learning how to write music. And I started writing a lot of music in Xhosa. But one
Mm.
of my dreams is to actually do an album for my home country. And I feel like when I do that album, I really need to be honest. I will not leave anything unsaid. So I've been putting that off for some time because I don't want to get banned.
So you don't have to answer this. What is? I mean, being from Zim, so I recognize, especially having this conversation as a total outsider, our
Yeah.
interpretation of what was going on in Zim. We wrote this like rebel song, which was a boxing analogy: the people of Zimbabwe versus Robert Mugabe and his army. That was what our song was about. But you,
Yeah.
from their family, grew up and obviously in touch with the sentiment of the time. What
Yeah.
was the reality of what was good and what was bad?
So, when I was younger, Zimbabwe was known as the breadbasket of Africa. So, I think when you go to Zim, you understand. I don't know if you've been to Zimbabwe before.
I've never been. I've
You've
never
never.
been there.
It's a beautiful country. It's a natural beauty. The weather, the climate, the people, um, just the landscape of the country. It's a beautiful country. It's a peaceful country. So growing up, my parents were um, we were middle class. My parents were teachers,
Mm,
and they had set their lives up such that we were never going to leave Zimbabwe. They had bought, their main home, which we lived in. They had like rental properties. They had a farming plot. My parents are farmers, and by the way, they now live in New Zealand where they work as dairy farmers.
is that
So,
sad or is that good? I mean,
well, to explain it, growing up, my parents loved farming, but they were
mm,
dedicated Zimbabweans. They were patriotic. They loved their country, and they'd saved up money. They'd saved up. They had been very resourceful to the point that we were never meant to leave Zimbabwe. Contrary to the belief, if you notice, there's a lot of Zimbabwean immigrants all around the world. Even in South Africa, I think there's about 2 million of us here. Um, but the thing is, what I think a lot of people don't know is that we didn't leave Zimbabwe by choice. I think the early
mm,
2000s, there was and I'm not, well informed about the politics of my country as I should be because I left when I was very young. I was 16 years old when
right.
I moved with my parents to New Zealand. And also coming from a culture where you're not allowed to talk about politics, you're not allowed to talk about religion, you're not allowed to talk about anything sensitive, you're not allowed to talk about it. So I feel like, I had grown up in a society that was as perfect could be. And then in the early 2000s, I think it was first the land uprisings,
Mm.
which I think were justified because, African people need to own the land. I think that's what needs to be the case. And it's said that it's still not the case, even in South Africa to this day. But then after that, obviously, sanctions were imposed on Zimbabwe, and then uh, the economy went
Mm.
downhill. Like I remember one day where my dad, who was a teacher at the time, earned a salary, and I think by midday the salary could only buy bread.
I mean, I remember that crazy time.
Yeah.
Uh,
So
do you think so? So, do you think that the Mugabe story is sort of the classic story of someone who was a visionary, who had a good intention, but as always, these cases, like so much power cannot help but corrupt people. And even if their intentions were still sound, there's just no way of fulfilling it. It's just, I mean, you see it happening in America, and you're seeing it happen all over the world. That even if the ideology is the right
yeah.
ideology or the thinking, but once you're in a government structure, there's so many other things at play, and you can't continue without being corrupted.
Yeah. I think the idea was great and still is. One thing
Mm.
about Zimbabweans, like my parents have 5 kids and they have at least 5 pieces of land. And my mother always says, you know what? You guys you'll never fight about, a place called home. You'll never fight about where to live. And then you come to South Africa and then you travel to like, the most beautiful part of the Western Cape. And then Nini, there's like matchbox houses and you can't
Yeah.
understand in this beautiful country with so much land, why are there, people that live in matchbox homes? Why?
Mm.
When you go to Zimbabwe, there's none of that. So I think his ideas, were great. I think it's just the implementation and also the level of greed, because I think that also plays a part. Where there's power, there's also greed.
So that's what I'm saying. Do you think is greed and corruption the same thing? I mean, doesn't one lead to the other? And are you saying that when you say, okay, the thing I'm asking, I'm not trying to get into a political conversation. I
Yeah.
don't know, but was was Mugabe corrupt at the end, or are you just saying the institution was corrupt?
I think that there was both corruption and greed.
Yeah.
I think that they
I don't know
exist.
how we got here, by the way. It's pretty
Yeah.
wild.
Yeah. Well, just from an observation point of view, as a younger person, I think
Mm.
that greed and corruption, coexist. They exist together. And I'm yet to, really go into his story, really go into the story of my country to understand why and to understand how we can get out of that. As a young African girl, I am concerned about these issues. I'm concerned about them because one, I have a voice. I'm a musician, and art is supposed to reflect the times. But secondly, I do believe that better structures can be in place. And outside of music, my other passion is social entrepreneurship. And, a lot of the times when I'm thinking about issues, in the context of the world or the African continent, I'm always thinking about what solutions can we young people come up with, especially from a social entrepreneurship perspective, where, whatever the resources we put into the communities come back and plow more to the community.
I love that, and also that's very much. I was just smiling because you mentioned the term social entrepreneurship, and I didn't know that term until recently because I never realized what the work that I'm involved in. I never knew what to call it. So
Yeah,
so that's been very helpful. But the other thing I wanted to see is that what I don't know you from a bar of soap, but from just
yeah,
the few minutes we've spent together, but really looking at the music and how you approach everything, you have a very unique quality, like such a soulfulness. And the thing that I love about you is that you actually care about the where you come from. So the fact that you're interested in going back to learn about the history of Zimbabwe and Mugabe, the fact that you still talk about Oliver Mtukudzi or Hugh Masekela and you reference them, where I
yeah,
find I struggle with the fact that so many artists do not know or do not care anything about our actual history beyond, pre TikTok. And our legacy artists are not relevant or regarded, and it's a very weird state that I find it in. So I love that you are sort of working in that space, or that's part of your story and you make it part of your
yeah,
story. I think that's so important.
yeah, yeah. Nah, thank you. I think for me, when it came to like meeting Oliver Mtukudzi and meeting Brahima Segela, it was merely luck. When I think of how I met Brahima Segela, I actually met him backstage of a festival in the Eastern Cape. And as you would know, like when it comes to festivals, that was like 7, 8 years ago. I was still upcoming in the game. And normally what happens is that us, the young artists will play earlier in the day and then the big guns will headline the festival. So in this case, the festival promoter had such terrible time management and stage management
What a
that
blessing.
which was a blessing to me because I found myself having to headline for Brahima Segela. So I ended up performing right after him because especially with him as well, like the older acts, they also need to perform by a certain time. Like if he doesn't
Right.
perform by 10 p.m., then
Well, he was still a rock star to the last day, right? Though.
yeah, no, he was still a rock star. So I found myself performing right after him, right? And then he
Yeah.
ends up watching my show, which he would have never done if I had
Wow.
performed at my, 4 p.m. time slot. So he watches my show, then comes up to me and is like, I really love, I loved watching you. You're authentic. There's a simplicity to your sound and who you are that just radiates when you're on stage. And from there we pick up a conversation. It's like, where are you from? I'm like, oh, I'm from Zimbabwe. He's like, oh, I'm going to see my friend Oli from Tukudzi in like 2 weeks. I'm like,
Oh my
I'm
God.
also going to see him. Like he was having, I think, like a 60th birthday, and he had invited me and invited him as well. So we end up meeting 2 weeks prior to our invitation.
So hold on a
So
second. Did you go to Zim Did you go to the birthday party?
yeah,
Okay, now you have to tell me everything that happened at the birthday party. I want to know
I
everything.
can't tell you everything, right? So I end up
Give
at
me
this.
something here. I'm dying.
I end up at the birthday party, and
Where
it's
is it?
all. It's at what's it called? The hotel, the Hilton Hotel in
Okay,
Harare.
yeah.
Yeah, and what Oliver Mtukudzi has done is he's invited all his friends, so all the older artists from different countries. Like I think Judith Sepuma was there as well.
Wow.
Eric Wainaina from Kenya. Um, a couple other names were there. I found myself as the only like 20-year-old. At the time I was like 22, 23 years
Were
old.
you supposed to be in Zim, or did you go for the birthday party?
I went for the birthday party.
Good.
So
That's the right answer. I would have done the same.
so Oliver Mtukudzi had recently discovered my music. I put out Tandolwetu, and bear in mind at the time I was still a university student. No PR, no promotions, no marketing, just the song that went out to radio. And just over a period of time, people fell in love with the song. And when he heard it and heard that I was from Zimbabwe, then he was interested in inviting me. So from there, I was able to just mingle with Brahuma Segela and Oliver Mtukudzi and just get to know them, just as I had like a father-daughter relationship with both of them. And the funny thing is they were like complete opposites, eh? Brahuma Segela is like a rock star, gangster. He'll tell you all the stories. He even told me stories about him and Miriam Makeba.
Oof. Oof.
That's like, Oliver Mtukudzi, on the other hand, he's like granddad, quiet, reserved, you know. But I learned a lot from being around them, and I actually have a music video to the song that I did with them, and I'm the only artist that has a song that features both of them. Like
That
a
is
collaboration with
unbelievable.
both of them. Yeah.
Shame. And then you lost them both very quickly and both close to each other. That was a very bad 2 years of passings we had.
Yeah, yeah. No, it was terrible. I mean,
Mm.
I remember seeing Brahu when he was not well, and he had lost weight, but like his spirit was still radiating. There's something about Brahu Masegela. Even if you read his biography,
Grazing in the
Grazing.
grass.
Oh my goodness. He was so candid and open about who he was.
Yeah.
And then when it came to Oliver Mtukudzi, I'm fortunate to have, I toured around Southern Africa with him at least like 6 months before he passed. And that's
Wow.
the time where like I'd gone independent, and I took the year off to tour Eastern and East Africa and Southern Africa. And I took the initiative to actually go on the road with him, book shows that he had booked so that I could spend, time with him. And in South Africa, some promoters were booking me to, like play in area with him and stuff like that. So just looking
Wow.
back,
You had great mentors.
yeah, just looking back, I'm filled with gratitude for having, spent the time with both of them.
That is truly unbelievable, and you lucky. I mean, the only thing I was I have this is not pales in comparison, but I got invited to Kai Semenya's 80th birthday.
Oh, I saw your was it like a TikTok the other day?
Yeah, I did one, and it was wild because I was there,
Yeah.
and the weird thing about it was like
Yeah.
I got there, I was totally by myself, and I had a very weird experience. I know this is your interview, but I'm gonna tell you anyway. This is a mad story. I got there early, and I sat down at the theater. I just got there, sat down, and this guy came up to me, and I'll tell you, the story is weird because I didn't know who it was. And it turned out to be, I can't remember his name. He's the last surviving member of the Manhattans.
Oh,
Right.
wow.
Now, he came up to me and gave me a huge hug and said, "I can't believe you're here. I'm so excited to see you." And I was like, "I do not know who you think I am, but I'm not that person." So he
Yeah.
said to me, I've got this big picture of you and me on
Mhm.
my wall at home, and I'd like to gift it to you. And hold on a second. And he went to get his wife, and he said, look who's here. And then they're sitting next to me, and they're like saying, and
Yeah.
they're asking me, how is Barbara? They say. I was like, I don't know who the fuck Barbara is. So I say, oh, Barbara, she couldn't make it, you know. Yeah, well, I don't know. I didn't know what to do.
John.
I didn't know. I was stuck, but they'd been talking
Yeah.
at me for like
Yeah.
10 minutes. I hadn't said a word. They'd given me a
Yeah.
hug and started ticking. I hadn't said it. So by the time
Yeah.
they were asking me about Barbara, I was deep in it. But I felt very uncomfortable. So what I said was very, very, very rude. I know. I said, I've got to go to the toilet. And then I ran away. And
Yeah.
I waited for the auditorium to be totally packed before I came in, because I didn't want to be seated next to them again and get stuck. So I waited till all the seats were
Yeah.
taken, and then I walked in. And then Kaifa saw me, and he said, the only seat available, he said, I think it was for like Julius Malema was supposed to sit there. He said, no, but he said somewhere else. So this seat's open. So I ended up sitting next to Kaifa's, right?
Oh, wow.
But then the dude from the Manhattans, who was at the front row, turned around and saw me sitting next to Caiaphas and was like, oh, of course, I must be that guy because I'm sitting next to the birthday boy. It was really wild. But the concert
Oh,
was one of
man.
the most amazing things I've ever. I felt like I was at a James Brown Motown concert. It was unbelievable. It was
Amazing.
unbelievable.
Amazing.
Um, sorry, that was my story. I've never told that story, so you took me there. Berita, you know what? The other thing that I'm really interested in about you is how smart
Mhm.
you are when it comes to the business side of stuff, and that
Mhm.
you know, that you are now, and well, you have been for a while. You're independent. Tell me a little
Yeah.
bit about, and also I want to move into your, you know, you are sort of music industry royalty now, the two of you, like these two dynamic powerhouse, um, married to each other, married to the
Okay.
to a troublemaker like myself, Nota. Um,
Okay.
Tell me a little bit about your take on the music industry and your approach to it, because I think a lot of people have a lot to learn from, I think, how you approach your business.
Yeah. So I started my career in 2012, right? And back then, I came to Joburg once, you know, like with my guitar, and went to, I know this might be unrelated to the story, but
Sorry,
it's going to
from where were
relate
you
to some.
coming? You were coming from
So
Zim, or were you
I was
living
coming
somewhere
from,
else?
so I moved to South Africa to study. I went to the Eastern Cape at Walter Sisulu
Ah, Eastern Cape.
University.
Right, right,
Yes.
right, right.
So I arrived there with my guitar and started playing community events, writing songs, you know, doing us, you know, at the time I was like in varsity. So just having, you know, fun outside of school with music. And I had thought that my career was only going to start after I graduate from school. So I was still just honing my craft and like just developing my audience and my style and my sound. But when I first came to Joburg, my uncle who had come to visit introduced me to someone from a radio station. And, you know, that's how I got my first interview at Alex FM here in Joburg. And from there, people started calling, asking, when is your music coming out? Oh, we love your voice. We love your music. And this was like all new to me because all
Mm.
along I'd just been just having a good time, you know, with music outside of school. And then I ended up being introduced to a record label at the time called Tami Music. And that's how I signed my first record deal. I never had a lawyer look at it. You know, I thought like this, you know, this is might be the only opportunity for me to record music at the time, you know. So I made a mistake that I was to pay school fees for like 5 years. For a very long time, I've been paying school fees for that mistake.
Are you still
So
paying for it?
thankfully, no, I actually
Mm.
bought my master's back now. That was the final school fees
Boom.
paying of that
That's
deal.
incredible.
Yeah. So I went, I mean, I came to Joburg, recorded my album, went back to school, you know, and my real name is Gugulethu, and Berita is actually my mother's name. So when my like the first copies of my album were ready, like the master, the record label asked me, what stage name are you going to use? And then I was like, oh, I'll use my mother's name because Gugu is a very popular Zulu Xhosa name. So I didn't
Mm.
want, you know, I thought it was too popular and just too ordinary to be like a stage name. So when I first got like the first copies of my CD, I was shy. I was nervous and naive. I didn't know anything about the music industry. Here I'd signed a contract, recorded, and now I had like a physical copy and I didn't know what to do. So I went back to school, and the label sampled Thandolwethu, which is like my breakout single. And once they sampled it, it started gaining traction on Metro FM. Eddie Zondi at the time used to play it every Sunday. So from there, people were asking, who's this young lady? There's this song, this soulful Afro song, and we don't know who sings it, to the point that I got a direct call from Musica at the time to bring my CDs in, which I now understand, it's like really rare. Like how does head office Musica just call me out of the blues and say,
more importantly, why is your record label not doing their damn job?
There we go. So I think once I got the call from Musica and I had to direct them to my record label, that's when I knew that something is wrong here. Like something is really wrong here, because I didn't know anything about promotions or marketing, but I'm like, something should be happening and it's not happening. So I ended up, like looking for like a manager, and still based in the Eastern Cape. So I found, one guy that had been in Joburg and had done road management, got him into my team, started actively promoting around campus. And back then, as soon as I started to have success, I think that summer, the CD sold about 5,000 copies. As soon as I started having like just a little bit of buzz, I started fighting with my record label, because I had signed a 360 contract without my understanding. So I'd signed, there was just one line there that says that I will be managed, so like so the moment gigs, I know. So the moment gigs started coming in, they wanted to claim a management fee on that.
They wanted to recoup. Yeah.
Thankfully, there was nothing to do with recoupment in that particular contract. But that's when I was like, but hang on a moment. At the time, I didn't understand. I didn't know anything about the recording industry or the music industry. But I was like, but why do you want to get paid off the work that you're not doing? You're not marketing my album, And then from there, it became a real fight. And, and by now the song is blowing up. Oskido has remixed my song and put it in his album. Now it's really blowing up. Now, people think I'm signed to Kalawa Jasmine. So now the record label is angry because they think that Kalawa Jasmine is trying to steal their artist. So now there's like an entire fight going on. And I think I went to go see one business affairs person that I was at the time recommended to sit with. And he looked at me and said, young lady, you need to go.
Who is this person? Who is the person?
I don't want to say his name.
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
I like to know, but I get you.
I'll tell you off the record though.
Okay.
Yeah. So he says to me, he looks at me and says, young lady, it's clear you feel entitled. You don't know anything about the music industry, but you think everything must be going your way. You need to go find a book called The South African Music Industry by Jonathan Shaw. That's all he said to me. I was like, went and got the book. The first thing I did when I got that book is went to the management part of it, read about it, and then I went to my road manager / manager and said, listen, we're not going to share 50-50. It doesn't work like this. So you...
Sorry.
Yeah.
Can I just check something? The 360 deal you were on, what was the record label wanting to take from your management fees? 50%?
So the initial 360, the record label wanted to take 20%, which is like 20% is a management fee. Then my new road manager / manager wanted to share equally, and he wasn't bringing any equity into it.
Jeez, this is like a real lesson from hell. I mean,
yeah. Yeah, I paid my school fees and I was yet to pay, because with that book, I was able to go back to my manager. I actually drafted our management agreement based on that Jonathan Shaw book. And from there, at least I was able to correct within, my smaller structure to say, listen, from a management point of view, I'm going to open a company and this is how it's going to work. you're going to take a 20% and I'm going to compensate you for XYZ costs, when we're traveling or, just normal, ordinary costs. And I'm going to open a bank account and, all the money is going to come into the business account and, you're going to have access to view what's happening, but I will control the bank account.
I'm going to pay you. That's what.
And I'm going to pay you. Yes.
Yeah.
So from there, luckily, I was able to sort that. But for I think 2013, 2014, 2015, I was like in a legal fight with my record label.
Oof, that's exhausting.
And at the time, I was a student. I was like a varsity student. So I remember going from writing exams to like talking to lawyers to paying hectic legal fees at the time, and not really getting anywhere as well, because I had signed the contract, and as and at the time as well, at the time I had interest from major record labels, but they needed to see a clearance. And without a clearance and that's the thing that young people don't get about now being in the digital era, where you can actually just go out there and put out your music, using a DIY service. Back then, there was none of that. And then by the time I had gotten out of it took me about 2-3 years to get out of the deal with my label. And by the time to get out of it, I had to literally not have lawyers involved, go down and sit with him and say, listen, what do you want? And at the time, I think we ended up agreeing. I still had a lot of school fees to pay. I ended up, I think, letting him publish my second album for 5 years or something like that. But then at least, I was able to get a clearance to say you're out of this deal. And by then I put out a second album, which hadn't done as well as the first one. The music was great. I mean, the second album had the song with Baba Oliver Mtukudzi and Pahuma Segela.
Yeah.
And, the record label had produced the second album, but it just didn't resonate with, just pop top 40 radio the way Gugulethu had. And because I hadn't had that kind of success and I hadn't really had a strong management team as well, I wasn't really getting the bookings as well. So that's when I knew
your
that
energy was into trying to untangle the mess you'd made as opposed to taking your career forward.
Yeah, that's the best way to put it. So I had to think. I moved to Joburg. I'd finished studying. I'd graduated cum laude with a diploma in financial information systems through all of this. So I was like, okay, at least I've got something, to show for it. And I had won best African pop album at the Metros. Gugulethu is it's a classic Afro soul song. So to this day, it's still one of my biggest songs. But I now had a sophomores curse because my second album hadn't done well. And I had to ask myself serious questions. And when you're an artist, you're very insecure. And to the point that when things are not going well, you think it's the music. You think maybe I'm not good enough. Maybe, and that messes with you, John, because then you go into a writer's block. The one thing that you really loved, that you were holding on to, then you can't do anymore. And not only are you in a writer's block, bills need to be paid.
Also, when you get in the writer's block cycle, just thinking that you're in a writer's block makes it worse. The panic that you get from thinking you're doing it just makes it no way. It's like trying very hard to go to sleep,
Yeah.
The harder you try, it's not going to happen.
Yeah. So I fortunately, met Benza from Fifth Season at that time as well. And Benza, I was very open and honest with Benza with, the success I had and, the school fees that I was paying and all that stuff. And, he took me under his wing. He signed me to another artist agreement and another management contract. And, I'll be honest to say what I was able to gain from working with Fifth Season over a period of 2 years is the understanding of how the business actually works.
They are business savvy, that team.
Yeah. So I was able to actually, Benza was the first person to break it to me to say, young lady, you've just had a sophomore's curse and you need to come back with a really strong album. I believe in you. And I'll always be grateful to Benza for that. But
Cool.
as well, before long as well, I was quickly able to see that the fifth season structure was not the structure for an artist like me. They had their hits and misses, and that's the thing about this industry, is that when you're successful, you're really successful. And when you tank, you really tank,
Yes.
So at the time, I think they were really focused on AKA's career. And, this was like at the height of, the Levels album. So I was able to watch all of this, and I put out my own album at the time, which, didn't do as bad as my second album, but was still not, like the way my debut album had performed, in the commercial space. Because then my album, my debut album had gone gold and is now platinum. So I think after working with like Benza for like 2 years, I was able to come to terms with the fact that I didn't think that deal structure worked for me. I didn't think that at the time, like, how do I put this, John? I just decided to take all responsibility to myself. I hated the fact that my third album hadn't met the expectation I had, and I couldn't blame myself for it. I could say that, there was a lot of a feeling of, I don't feel like, my partners did what they were supposed to do. So I was like, what would it be like to actually take that responsibility of people and just put it towards myself? What would that be like? What's the risk in that, and what's the reward in that? And, what are the challenges in that? So the risk in that was that I'd never seen a female artist in South Africa go independent and do better than they had done with a label before, especially in the Afropop, Afro soul space.
Game on.
Game on indeed. I'd seen artists that, still hold on to the success from a recording industry perspective, that they still are able to benefit from the success that they had with, the previous label, which is, great. But I thought there was a missing link there. So it meant that I needed to educate myself about the industry, The other thing is that I realized that as well, like, I started my career in the last bout of physical sales. So because of that, I just started to realize that music, the industry, the business is always moving with the technology. So some people are going to be left behind. Some people are going to win. Some people are going to be Lil Nas X, mainly because you just came out with a song and, technology was moving towards TikTok, and you were able to monetize and you were able to advertise within that 15-second space.
I mean, I think the thing that's interesting is what the major labels are doing really well is using the tech, like, and not telling anyone how it works. So if if you can figure that stuff out, you can do everything that a label can do.
Definitely. It's a lot of hard work. It's a mind fuck for an artist, because you're used to just being in the studio and just writing. But I really had to start to think of myself as any business owner, even if I were like a fashion designer or like a chef, that had my own restaurant, or a doctor that had like a practice, I would have to be competent in my craft, and I'd also need to be competent in the business. And I would need to surround myself with a team that works for me, and that reports directly to me. I would need to be able to know why. I'd need to be able to set key performance indicators and be able to see what's working.
More business to me.
What's working and what's not working. So that's really the route that I took over the past 3 years, and it worked out. I put out my fourth album, and like, I've had, last year I spent like 4 weeks at number one on radio. I had like three actually really successful singles. And for me, the measurement is with my fans. Like, I can see the engagement with my fans. They know my music. In the Benza era, where I had a great album, my fans were asking me, what's happening? When is your album coming out? You know what I mean? And in the previous era, with my second album, my fans were asking, why is your album not in stores? You
Right.
know, with my first album, Musica was calling me and asking me, why don't we have your album? So with my fourth album, I was able to take full responsibility. I was able to like grow my streaming numbers. I'm still working towards that. I'm still not where I would like to be, but what makes me sleep at night is that I'm fully responsible for my career, and I'm fully responsible for the energy that I bring towards it, whether it's in the business or in the art. And I'm in a position now where I own 80% of my catalog. I was able to buy back my initial albums, and now I own all the new stuff.
That is a great story, Berita. I mean, that is really an inspiring story. So let me ask you about that. What is the I mean, why are more artists not able to do that? I mean, obviously, all your bad experiences put you in a position where you actually knew a lot of how to do things badly, or
Yeah.
what or where the holes in the system were. To build a system yourself is a hell of a thing. To build a team
Yeah.
is a hell of a thing. What are those things that you think up and coming artists don't know that you could share with them that would help them get into a stronger position?
Position. I think digital made things much easier, hey? And I think that a lot of I get a lot of correspondence from upcoming artists, especially female, because that's where I
Mm.
devote my energy. So I actually have just started an NGO now called The Womb, the Women of the Music Business, because I was
What's it?
constantly
The womb.
the
What did you
womb,
call it?
the
W
woman
O
of,
M.
yes, the womb, the woman of music business.
Amazing. Tell me about
So
this.
I've been getting a lot of women, well, just artists in general. Sometimes I get asked questions by upcoming artists, sometimes artists that are in my tier, sometimes artists that are perhaps more advanced than me. I find myself being a resource for a lot of people, which, for me, I had to think very carefully about, because I'm trying very much to be an intentional person. So when I was intentional to myself, I realized that I really um, enjoy sharing knowledge. I enjoy leading, especially even within my own team, within my own business. I enjoy watching people grow. So I
Mm.
then last year started the Women of the Music Business, as a way for me to support upcoming, and not just artists, but like just women in the creatives. So we're currently in the process of building different programs that support women, whether it's like artists, engineers, producers, you know. Heck, we don't have enough executives in the music industry, and that are female, sorry. So I'm thinking a lot about that gender disparity within the music industry, and asking myself how I can provide a solution, without, because I also am still trying to figure out my business structure. So I'm not in a
Mm.
position to like sign or develop talent, but I am in a position to have this social enterprise venture to feel, just to feel my need to share that information.
That is amazing. And two things. Firstly, if you ever need to use Amped to host your thing there, you consider that space yours. I mean, that's what we want to
Thank
do
you.
there.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
have workshops there, use anything you want there. That would be amazing. Do you
Yeah.
know about, I don't know that it's exactly related, but it might be worth it. How do you know Yvonne Chaka Chaka?
Yes, I do. She's my mentor. She's my mom. She's my
So,
friend.
so you know about her women radio station that she's doing to unite women from around the world?
Yes, yes. I've been
And
there.
oh, okay, you've been there. All right, so you
Yeah.
know all about it there. I just thought
Yeah.
maybe there was a connection between what you're doing and what she's doing,
Yeah.
but there
Yeah.
obviously is.
Yeah.
And then I think I've seen you on Clubhouse around as well. Are you how how you? I mean, that app's unbelievable.
Yeah, I love Clubhouse. I love connecting with people authentically. And I
Mm,
think for the longest time, I'm quiet, I'm shy. So I think sometimes it's been to my disadvantage, because then I would have information to contribute, but I would not come
mm.
forth, you know. But recently when I sit in spaces, I get invited again, to speak in them or to delegate or to be a part of the conversation, especially because I really have passion. I love music, period.
Mm.
Outside of like the business, I genuinely love music, and I see myself like making music, like I don't see myself retiring from music. I once thought I was going to retire because of the business and how much it gets into your head,
Yeah, it's
but
enough to
now
turn anybody off.
yeah, yeah. So now I find it fascinating to really grow, to allow myself to use all my talents, to use, the talent that really brings me here to sing and to write songs and be on stage. But also I'm turning 30 this year. I don't want to be one of those artists that are still trying to be a pop artist and your time is up.
Right.
So I want to make sure that I continue enjoying what I do, but I also fuel a younger generation of particularly female creatives,
Well, this is what
artists.
I was gonna say. Don't you see in Clubhouse? I mean, it hasn't adopted here yet, and partially because
Yeah,
it's still on iPhone only.
yeah,
To me, Clubhouse offers a solution to a massive problem in South Africa, and that is access to information and access to
yeah,
resources from
yeah,
home. And for you to do something like your womb project through Clubhouse, especially when they launch it into Android, I see Clubhouse transforming Africa if we can just
absolutely.
get people to understand the power of it.
Yeah, I share the same sentiments. I've obviously been taking one step at a time with the womb, but the next step is definitely to set up a room so that I can engage women from all across the continent because we are
Mm.
continental. We've run one program before last year, which is a Pan-African program that impacted 30 women. We're just about to run another one. I'll add you to my newsletter because I see
Please.
that there's a lot of things I need to chat to you about.
There's a lot of stuff I've been making notes that when we finish, I wanna text you about, or we can talk about another time.
Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah.
Oh, have a lot. Okay, we don't have a lot of time. I
Mm.
just wanna. I saw how you gave me a funny look when I brought this up, but I want to understand because I know Nota for years.
Yeah.
How did you meet? Uh, and I mean, yeah, I can understand. This is a weird question. I'm asking you this question because I wonder what someone would ask my wife, being married to someone who throws firebombs into situations on a daily basis.
Yeah.
That's me.
Yeah.
So I wanted to get your take on it from the inside, from
Yeah.
the other side.
Yeah. Yeah. I met actually my story of meeting Nota is funny because before we met a couple of times. And he reminds me that I saw you at this place and I saw you at this place. I'm like, really? you know? Um, but we really connected after having met a couple of times. We connected end of 2018. And I think we first met obviously because at the time I was, like there's some business stuff that I, was sitting down with him up on. And then from there we just developed a friendship very quickly and became lovers very quickly, I guess. And I think what excites me about Dota, outside of like obviously the music industry, because I'm not one that believes in like power couples or like you know, I I just believe in like just meeting people and having those connections. And I think when it comes to Nota, um, just on a personal basis, we connected on so many levels. We also love music as well, both of us. And, he's also more into obviously the business side of things in terms of the music. And I think what we,
But so are you. I mean, this is where the dynamic is really interesting.
yeah,
You've wrestled control of your career. You're the boss of your empire.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
I am interested to imagine how the discussions and arguments are around maybe a particular strategy or a decision might be.
Absolutely. I mean, we discuss a lot of things. And sometimes we, like if you were to go through our iMessages or like WhatsApp, sometimes we're just sending each other like music business worldwide articles.
All
That's
right.
what it is. And like a heart. We always just
Yeah.
watching, just like, also, did you see this thing? So what do you think
Mm.
of this? Oh, okay. We engaged each other like that, in terms of like the business of music. But I think more than anything, we are a support structure for each other.
Mm.
He does support me a lot. He likes to pull away though, because I am also quite an independent and strong woman, and he doesn't like people thinking that, because a lot of people would think that like he manages me or he's involved in my stuff, well, which he's not, and he likes to pull away for that purpose. You
So he
know,
knows where the line is and he knows where to make space or to
yeah,
leave space.
yeah. He actually mostly makes space. To be quite honest, he's
Mm.
hardly. Yeah, for him, a lot of people will see things and be like, "Yo, your wife or whatever," and he'll be like, I don't even know about that. Like
Right.
I just know that my wife is busy. I just see my wife just being busy.
That's
And
cool.
actually I think I'm busier than him. I'm like, there's times where he wants to chat and I'm like, I'm actually, quite busy.
That's an incredible quality. I can't help but interfere with my wife's business. I can't help it. It drives her nuts.
Yeah. But I also I enjoy supporting him, because like you say, he's someone he's a fireball, and I'm the person that's up in the morning doing yoga, doing meditation. He's up in the morning and already like he
Dropping
knows
Twitter
what
bombs.
you know to the point that like people will ask me, sometimes people will like tag me online and I'm like, guys, only if you knew, like I just had like a 20-minute meditation session right now. Like I couldn't care less what's like trending on Twitter.
Oh,
Yeah,
amazing.
so it's that crazy dynamic, but yeah.
Incredible. Um, okay, last question, and then I will let you go. I actually feel like I haven't even started the conversation I wanted to have with you. That I would love, wait, maybe in a few months, or maybe informally, would just have to continue this conversation.
Yeah,
I'm loving chatting to you, really.
yeah.
I think you're really incredible at everything you're doing. What I wanted to say is how, in a short version, how has your lockdown been, and where are you with a new project?
Yes. Um, so lockdown, oh my goodness. For me, I think lockdown really gave me time to reflect, you know, to really reflect on myself and take care of myself. I think I spent the last 9 years really trying to, just fight in
Mm.
terms of like my career. And I'll tell you, John, like I feel like, like the artist career is a very selfish career. It's very demanding on you as a human being. It's demanding on your mental health, you know. So I think for me, the COVID, the lockdown period really helped me to, find my center. And that's what I'm continuously working on at the moment.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
And so, and musically,
And musically, I'm done with my upcoming EP. I've been done for a while now. So I'm excited because I mean, I was able to work on two projects last year. The one
mm,
that, that came out, the album,
the, yes,
Songs in the
and
Key
then
of Love.
yes, and then after that was the duet you did with the Ndlovu guys, right?
Yes, yes. Then I closed the year with the duet with Ndlovu Youth Choir, which was
Mm.
just a phenomenal experience. And then I also worked on an EP, which is upcoming, called Dance, Praise, and Worship. It taps more into the spiritual. I would say it's a cross between like Afro soul dance music and really just the spiritual undertone, which I gained during the lockdown, which I feel like, we all need right now.
Mm. Amazing. And then lastly, if you do a Zimbabwe album,
Yeah.
would it be an album of uh covers maybe, or would it be an album of you just expressing yourself through the music?
Yeah. I think that It would definitely be expressing myself through music. I would tackle the themes, that, have put Zimbabwe on the map in the past 20, 30 years. And also I would reflect on how those things affect the rest of Africa, especially South Africa. I want to kind of like intersect Zimbabwe and South Africa within the African context. As someone that is Zimbabwean, and I've seen that some of the challenges that we face here in South Africa, with the political system, and some of the challenges like, the fees must fall movements, I can see certain things, certain roots and seeds that come from Zimbabwe that are infiltrating into South Africa. And I can see how that affects the rest of the continent.
Amazing. And it is something weird that we don't do more inter-country work in this. I mean, South Africa seems to be an island. We treat it like an island. But while the rest of the continent know that they exist, we don't seem to here. So I love that you're bridging a gap there.
Yeah. I would go as far as to say, I remember when I was in East Africa, someone said, South Africans, they think they're South Africa and the rest of Africa. South Africans don't think they're in Africa.
It's weird. And it's a very weird phenomenon, and it's time to do away with it. I'm very much a supporter of closing the borders there.
Yeah.
When I say closing the borders, I mean doing away with them, not closing them.
Just that intersection. But I think we see it a bit in music. We see it a lot, especially, there's a love-hate relationship between Nigeria and South Africa.
Yes.
1 minute it's Afro beats, 1 minute it's Amapiano, the next it's like Afro piano.
Nigeria wins now. Nigeria's won the war now. They've taken off. And we, the ones who we're not the center of the universe anymore. We've got to catch up. And maybe that's the incentive for us to be a bit more open about these sorts of things.
Yeah. But I think overall, I'm grateful, man. I'm grateful for South Africa. I wouldn't be who I am today if we're not for, the welcoming arms of South Africans.
Last question. Sorry, I've said that 6 times already. Was it difficult to come to South Africa?
You know what, hey? Traditionally and historically, my people are from KwaZulu-Natal. My surname is Khumalo. So in terms of like the history, without going into it deep, tribally, I'm South African. So even the language that I speak, Ndebele, is like a Nguni language, which is a language that sits in between Zulu and Xhosa. So because of that, for me, coming to South Africa, interestingly, felt like coming home. And more so when I go to Durban, I even find that even when I'm like doing shows in Durban or promoting, there's just this energy that exists. And I think it's because my ancestors and my people are South African.
Amazing.
Yeah.
Berita, I'm such a fan of you, definitely as an artist, but more importantly as a person. I really appreciate you coming on What's Your Poison, even though you don't drink, and I didn't hold it against you. And I appreciate you very much, and I hope we can catch up and talk more. Really, I do.
Yeah. Thank you so much, John. I enjoyed myself.
Good luck, and go and dominate, woman.
Thank you. All right.
Cool.
Cheers.